Hello everybody and welcome to the Earful Tower where the trumpets should be sounding because this is the 100th episode. That's right, 100 episodes of the Earful Tower podcast. I'm your host Oliver G and I just figured I'd give you a little bit of behind the scenes and perspective on some of the triumphs that came this week before we get into today's guest, David Lebovitz, the chef and the author. But first, 100 episodes, that is absolutely crazy to think. I was just a kid off the streets 100 episodes ago with a crazy dream, and that was to run a podcast about France. And since then, almost, I think, over 2 years, I think every single Monday I've come out with an episode about Paris, about France. A lot of you followed along for the honeymoon season where my wife Lena and I traveled around the entirety of France. So this podcast has really taken me places, and I hope wherever you're listening to, it's taken you places too. So firstly, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for sharing, commenting, signing up, subscribing, following on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. It really means a lot to me, and we've come a long way over these 2 years. Let me just point out some of the milestones, big milestones that coincidentally fell over this same week of 100 episodes. One was a big one, is that there are now 10,000 plus followers on the Facebook channel of the Earful Tower. That is brilliant. That's mind-boggling to think that 10,000 people have clicked to follow anything that I've done. That's mind-blowing. I can't quite get over that one. That's amazing. But also, the biggest, despite the 10,000 followers and the 100 episodes, the biggest news of this week is that with the 200th follower on Patreon, the sort of crowdfunding website where people subscribe to this show to see all the extra stuff, we reached the target, my own target, of having a minimum wage from the Earful Tower. So it trickled over just yesterday. I'm recording this on Monday, so it trickled over on Sunday. And now I can officially call it a job. So the Earful Tower is my job. We did it. Sound those trumpets again. Oh, I still don't have a sound producer, so you'll have to imagine the trumpets. But it's really exciting times. And as I promised, I'd give a shout out. Maria Smith. I said I'd give a shout out to the person who took me over to the minimum wage threshold, and that's you, Maria Smith. She wrote, "Merry Christmas, Oliver. I'm excited about all your new walking tour vlogs this month. They've been exceptional. Your co-hosts have been outstanding too. As my thank you, I've increased my support. May 2019 bring you much more success." Thank you, Maria. I'm going to talk to you guys about these walk shows that I've been doing at the end of the episode. I realize there are probably a lot of people who came here for David Lebovitz. So let's get into episode 100 of the Earful Tower. You're going to be hearing from David Lebovitz, chef, pastry expert, and also author. In fact, he's just written a new book. It's called La Part, or as I pronounced it, La Part. It's pronounced La Part, guys. Get it right. You'll hear me mess that up in a second, but he's talking about his new book and a lot more, and as you'll hear, we're going to get him in for the book club, the Earful Tower Book Club, in February. So here he is, David Lebovitz, chef from the United States, for the Earful Tower's 100th episode. And one last word, thank you for making all this possible. Without you listeners, supporters, subscribers, I would have given up a long time ago, as I've said many times. So thank you, and let's get on with number 100. David Lebovitz, how are you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome back to the studio.
I am so happy to be here, although this is quite a different studio than you had before.
That's true. You brought up straight away. The last time we met was about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Could it be that much?
It was 97 episodes ago.
That's, wow,
Bakers are good at math.
Yeah, right. I guess you have to be. So that when we met, we may as well start with that because you're one of the I was going to say one of the founding fathers of the Eiffel Tower, but that wouldn't make sense.
Founding fathers.
It just came to my head.
Okay, I should be on a coin.
Yeah,
it sounds like something.
But you were in there one of the first episodes, and I've long felt guilty about it for a number of reasons. Mm-hmm. One was that I asked you, I basically blindfolded you and gave you a croissant with. Do you remember what it was?
It was something like a meat product that came not from something French.
No.
But it was something not good.
It was a cheeseburger inside a croissant.
Yeah, but there was something, I think it was a McDonald's cheeseburger.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what it was. And I felt so guilty about it. I say it now with a smile on my face, but That haunted me for a while, David.
Because I was a vegetarian for like 37 years until all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, so you ruined everything.
Oh my God.
Just kidding.
I could put that on the book cover of the Earful Tower.
Actually, I used to tell people like I've never eaten at McDonald's in France, and now I can't say that anymore.
Oh my God. I take that as a kind of a claim to fame then. I gave David Lebovitz his first French McDonald's experience.
And the last.
But it's been 2 years. I finally convinced you to come back on the show after an email every single day, more or less. No, it wasn't that
Is
bad.
that you?
No. But we're here. You've got a book out. Congratulations. Congratulations on La Part.
Oh, yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
It's actually La Part. You pronounce the T because it's a short version of L'appartement.
So it's like comme d'hab instead of comme d'habitude.
Oui, so it's La Part.
Ah, okay.
And what's interesting is after we kept trying to think of a title for the book. That was the original title I came out with. I was like, that has to be the title. And usually your first inclination about something is always the best.
Yeah.
So after, I was writing the book, and then afterwards I was like, well, maybe I should change the title. It shouldn't be something French. And that was just what I settled on. And then I realized, oh my God, when the book came out, I was doing interviews. I realized, oh my God, I titled my book something you can't pronounce in English.
Well, and how is that?
I should have called it The French Apartment.
No, I like the name. Although me not being able to pronounce a French word correctly is nothing new for anybody, especially not me.
Well, it's a strange word for it because it's not a sound. L'appart. It's a sort of a thing in the middle.
L'appart. Okay, good to know. It's breaking all the rules of. It's like bon app, they say as well, rather than bon app.
Oui.
Yeah.
Bon app. Oui, bon app.
Has your last time we spoke? I remember you said that your French wasn't perfect. Has it improved? It's like a catch up.
Well, it's interesting because I was talking to a secretary the other day at a place, and she looked at me. She goes, "How long have you lived here?" I said, and she goes, "Oh, your French is very good." And I went home and I told my partner because he sometimes corrects me because I make the same mistakes over and over again.
Right.
I'm very untrainable,
Right.
as he's found out.
Maybe that's something about cooking. That you get the recipe exactly how you like it, and then you don't change it. Maybe that's what you've done with French.
I actually don't know. There's a lot of exceptions in French.
Sure.
A lot of people have asked me over the years, they're like, do you speak French? And I'm like, even the French don't speak French.
Yeah.
If you talk to any French person, they're like, it's a very difficult
That's
language.
true, right? They do. And they say, and I've witnessed French people having sort of arguments or deep discussions over whether something should be a what tense or what not tense or whatever.
Yeah, the verbs. There's 14 verb tenses in French. I think there's 7 in English. Actually, what's funny is I was in Sicily and they don't have a future tense in the Sicilian language.
Wow.
They don't talk about the future.
That's interesting.
I guess.
Oh, wow. I wonder why not.
Yeah. Well, I've been to Sicily a few times and they're pretty, it's a pretty rugged, wonderful place. It's very sort of fixed, it's this island, so it's sort of fixed in time. And that might be part of it. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Sicily, but
what were you going to say before I cut you off about your
me wanting to never come back on the show? Is that it? Okay.
No, you said your partner corrects you or has given up on correcting you.
No, he corrects me.
Yeah.
Okay, so
how's that feel?
It's okay. That one of the things about learning French is that, or any language, you have to do it. You shouldn't be afraid, and you shouldn't make people make you feel afraid to speak it. If someone's correcting you all the time, then you don't want to do it, and you're going to make mistakes. And it's a lot of French people, they actually think it's charming. They're like, "Oh, c'est charmant, monsieur," and it's sort of sweet. And I have French friends who speak really good English, and I don't correct them unless it's something. I was recently actually talking to somebody, and if you go to a chocolate shop in Paris, when the people who speak English there, they'll say, "Oh, this is in black chocolate," and because it's chocolat noir.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, in English, black chocolate sounds funny. We say dark chocolate,
Right, sure.
which actually doesn't make sense if the same word. But I just sort of tell them that, and I only do that just because I know that they're dealing with the public. And I was like, you want to sell more chocolate, say dark chocolate.
So then you're doing, with your friends, then you're doing a similar thing to what your French friends are doing with you. In other words, so it's better to have a conversation than to be correcting each other all the time, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, my partner doesn't speak a lot of English, so he's not there yet. It's not I don't want to correct, if I went through every fine point. For a while, we had English Sunday, and we were only going to speak English on Sunday.
Yeah.
And that lasted until about 8:43 a.m.
I do a similar thing with my wife, who's Swedish. If you're listening to the Earful Tower for the first time, you wouldn't have heard my wife's voice, but she's Swedish, but she speaks great English. But we, so that I could keep my Swedish, we had things like we'll speak Swedish at the supermarket.
Oh, okay.
So, you have a specific thing or a specific act, and you do it like that because a whole day, I'm not surprised you got sick of it at 8:43.
Well, it's interesting. A friend of mine, his mother was Swedish, and his father wouldn't let the kids learn Swedish because he wasn't Swedish. So he didn't want everyone in the family to be able to speak a language that he didn't
selfish.
understand. Well, it is selfish.
He could have learned, no? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Swedish language or your friends.
Okay. Okay.
We're here to talk a little bit about, I think, a couple of things, but primarily is your book, and also Christmas. I thought we could talk about.
Right, because it's December.
That's right, and there's a fair chance someone will be listening to this in the future, and it will be irrelevant, but it's still something to sort of know the way that the French.
What happens
Christmas.
every year? So
That's true.
Yeah.
Are you going to be here for Christmas this year?
I am.
Yeah.
I actually like being in Paris when there's not a lot of people here, and I get a lot of emails from people as the weeks progress. Visitors and like, what are we gonna do? It's going to be open after Christmas.
Do you respond to those kind of emails? I imagine you get a lot of emails.
I do. I respond to certain things. I can't do it all. It's like now there's like Instagram messages.
Sure.
And it's like I could stay home all day and just answer those.
And then there's Facebook messages, Facebook comments, Instagram comments.
Right. I try to put, I have a frequently asked questions section on my blog, which is very, very thorough.
Yeah.
And it answers a lot of questions, like where should I go for Christmas?
And what do people just keep scrolling until they find what they're looking for? Is that how it works?
Yeah. It's called the internet.
No, I mean, so if someone Googles
the Google,
if they Google what to do in Christmas, that's not a section of the website. It's just
because that also
there.
changes every year.
Sure.
You
basically invented the food blog. That's what I tell people.
Well, it's funny because I just realized it's going to be 20 years old.
20 years old.
Yeah.
There's probably listeners to this show who aren't even 20
I know,
years
like
old.
you. Yeah. You were probably, anyhow.
I'm older than 20. Don't worry about that.
I always, that information's there. It's just, it changes every year, like what's open for Christmas. I don't know. But the broader answer is I just tell people, just come to Paris, walk around, see what's open, eat in a cafe, have a carafe of wine, have some oysters. You don't need a reservation, just, go to like l'Européenne across from the Gare de Lyon. It's a truly, French experience.
Which one's that, l'Européenne across from the Gare de Lyon?
It's a oyster bar.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people think, I don't want to eat oysters across from the train station. Sure. It's going to be touristy. But it's not. It's a sort of an old French bistro. I think they fixed it up a few years ago. But, you can... It's oysters,
Speaking of fixer-uppers, that's what your apartment.
That's
what your apartment was. So much so that it prompted you to write an entire book about it, a memoir, which is off the usual tracks for what you do.
Exactly.
Which is obviously cookbooks.
Yes.
Someone might be listening and have no idea who you are still.
Okay.
Or they might have just walked into the room.
Okay, well, I've written a bunch of cookbooks, one on chocolate, one on ice cream, one on French cooking. But I also wrote a story about sort of when I moved to France. What my life was like then, called The Sweet Life in Paris.
Right. Is that kind of the one that most people think of when they think of your books?
Well, they usually think of my cookbooks.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about The Sweet Life in Paris is it's probably 10 years, it's like 11 years old.
Yeah.
And people still love that book because it's not the usual, I moved to Paris and this happened and then I fell in love. And then at the end, I loved Paris and I'll always love Paris, but I'm going back to the U.S.
Sure.
And then it's over. And my life wasn't over. It was like, that was just sort of the beginning.
Sure.
And I also, being somebody who worked in restaurants all his life, I was a pastry chef, I was a line cook, I want to keep it real. And so I actually wrote about, the funny things and the absurd things about life here, that are, like being in the changing room at yoga and like talking to women like just naked, or naked on the waist up. It's just, it's very French.
Yeah.
And then I went back to America and I went to like a yoga class and all these women were like screaming at me to get out of there.
I've been to one yoga class in Paris. I didn't see any naked women.
Okay.
Where's your yoga class?
Well, I
And
don't
what's
do
the
yoga
address?
anymore. That's why you're not allowed. That's why they don't want men like you.
Yeah, I was just kidding, of course. Of course. That was for the listeners. So, based on the success of that book and like a light bulb moment that you had, I think in New York City, you decided to write about L'appart.
Well, it was a story, I'd gone through this renovation. I decided after living here about 10 years, I thought, well, I'm here. I live in Paris.
This is it. It was a one-way ticket.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Some people would call you a lifer. Have you heard this?
Well, it's funny because people do often ask, like, how long are you going to live in Paris?
Right.
And I go, how long are you going to live in Houston?
Yeah.
And they're like,
Exactly.
They think it's like we have a plan.
But I have a theory that if you stay somewhere for longer than 5 years, you're a lifer and you ain't moving.
Well, I've lived in, New York and I've lived in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I lived there, in San Francisco for a number of years, longer than 3 to 5. So I was a lifer.
So my theory didn't work with
Yeah.
you. Okay.
So when I start my podcast, I'm going to interview you.
I'd love to be on your podcast if you started it. That would be great. What would you call it?
I'd call it...
You've got no plans to start a podcast, do you?
It's like titling a book.
Yeah.
It takes a while to think
you just
about
go with the first thing. I once had an author on here who told me he had an idea for his book title, and he went all over the place thinking of different titles, and then came back to the first one. It was you. L'appart.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, titling
I'm
things
quoting
is
you.
hard. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we do my podcast, I'll consult you on.
I would love to be on your podcast. And a big shout out to all the listeners in New York and San Francisco that you mentioned, because they are two very popular cities for this podcast.
Well, maybe if we get your Patreon subscribers up to 1,000 subscribers, when you hit that point, then I'll start a podcast.
Oh,
How's
well,
that?
there you go. And
Okay.
speaking of, I'll do a little ad for myself because you did bring it up, David, is that we're going to do two things for Patreon supporters here. Is firstly, I ask members, I often say, I've got a guest coming in, do you have any questions? People went haywire asking questions for you.
Haywire.
Yeah, haywire.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but there are a lot. So I figured what we'd do after this is we'd sit down and just read through all those comments, and anyone that was kind enough to leave one, we'd answer it for the Patreon members.
Sure.
And then the other thing is the book club that I've got. You've agreed February to be the Earful Tower's book club book. So we're going to be talking a lot more in detail about L'appart, which I haven't read yet. That's why I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Okay.
But I read along with the book club members.
Okay.
Not like word for word, but we
Okay.
sort of say we're going to be a quarter of the way through here.
Well, it's interesting because people have told me, they go, oh, I didn't realize a book about renovating an apartment could be such a page turner.
Really?
And it takes a lot of twists and turns and a lot of things you wouldn't expect happen. And some people, a lot of people had to put it down for a bit. They were like, it was so intense. I was like, oh, good.
like a Stephen King novel or what? I remember one of the only books I put down was a Stephen King. It was a book about I think it was called The Fog, and I read it as a child. And there was a scene where, cover your ears if you're sensitive. There was a scene where
I don't like stuff.
where someone chopped off a part of a man's body.
Okay.
David's covering his ears.
Yeah, I don't like gore.
Neither did I. I put it down. I put it down.
Yeah, a friend of mine wrote a book called Little Bee about a woman in Africa, a young woman, and she meets a couple on their honeymoon, and there's 3 pages, and I had to
Really?
go ahead.
What gory stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was psychologically gory. It was a lovely book,
Okay.
wonderful book, but those few pages,
Right.
He's a great writer, Chris Cleve. So my book,
It's not like that.
There's no gore in it. There could have been,
Yeah.
but there isn't. It was just a story that I had to tell, and it was sort of I wanted to keep people involved and engaged in it. And I also made the chapters short.
I love when chapters are short.
Well, people, they read differently now. We read on the subway. We read on the metro. We don't have, reading a 20-page chapter. It's actually easier to digest.
Sure.
And I also broke the book up with 25 recipes about. So putting them in there sort of changed, took people, it was another side of the story I could tell through food because that's what I do too. I have a blog and I talk about food a lot and it's important to my life. So I broke up the book.
It's crucial to your life, isn't it?
It's critical for all of our lives.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Like a lot of the way we read, because so many people do lists. Everything's written in lists, for better or worse.
Listicles.
I write a lot of them on the Earful Tower.
Yeah.
I don't know if you write them on your blog so much.
I used to.
But people say that it's because everything, if you want to get information, it's like if you're going shopping, you don't write an essay. When I go to the shops today, I need to get some plums. It would make no sense.
I just learned something recently that some food bloggers are writing the recipes for Alexa, which is that Amazon thing that it reads to you.
Right.
And I didn't know what Alexa really was or how it worked. So I was in New York and my friends had one. And they were asking, like, Alexa, the weather tomorrow. So I started asking her questions like, how many testicles does Paul Simon have? And Alexa was like, I do not know the answer to that.
Is there a story behind that I don't know?
No, I just, was throwing out, like, questions.
That's the first question you had for Alexa,
yeah,
David?
It was like, they just didn't, so I started throwing all these weird questions.
I'd be thinking more about how many testicles Garfunkel had. He's got the high voice, like a eunuch.
I don't think it's a question of, no. Well...
Anyway, so the book. So you live. It's set in the 11th arrondissement.
Right.
Many people call it the trendy arrondissement.
It is, and it was always trendy.
Is that true?
When I moved here, I was like, oh, I love the 11th.
What year was this?
In about 2003.
Yep. Okay.
But I was living in the Bastille, which is very not trendy. And the 11th became trendy, but it sort of, like a lot of times places, like certain neighborhoods, like the 10th, it was cheap. So a lot of restaurants could open, a lot of young people. And there's a really good concentration of restaurants, of good quality ones, because the rents were cheap and you could do it there. I think the 11th got expensive before all those businesses could move in.
Sure.
So for a while, even though it was like hip and trendy, there wasn't a lot of good stuff. Like when I moved into my apartment, there was 5 bakeries in my neighborhood, and they were all terrible. And it's such you live in Paris, it's like, I don't want to have a terrible bakery near me.
Especially for you. That must have been torture.
Yeah. And then Chambellan Bakery opened, which is wonderful. And the day it opened, I went in there and I said, thank you so much. And I also said, like, you're going to be a huge hit.
Yeah.
And then they have been, and it's great. It's a great bakery. And now Maison Lendemain opened.
Right. So they're both in the sort of Oberkampf area, right?
Yeah.
The one Chambellan's just down from Café Oberkampf?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just in
friend of the show, Guy Griffin. We can say hello. He'll probably be listening.
Guy, how are you?
How are you, Guy? He can't answer though. But okay, so the 11th. But you, how private are you with the sort of part of the arrondissement that you live?
Well, it's a big arrondissement, so it's my neighborhood.
Yeah.
The Bastille.
Yeah. So sort of the southern end of it.
Yeah.
Do you get people recognizing you on the street? And what happens?
I say hello.
But they come. I mean, it must be a weird thing. I mean, not many chefs get recognized.
Yeah, well, everyone's really nice.
As a percentage of chefs, right?
Everyone's really nice.
Yeah.
I actually was with a very well-known chef once at the Bastille, but I didn't know who he was. He was coming from America to tape a TV show, and like his
how well known are we talking?
Well, it's Andrew Zimmern.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I don't know.
I mean, he's not
bluffing.
Well, he's not well known in Europe, but in America, he's on TV a lot. And he's a great guy. So I had to look him up before he came, and we went to the market. And as soon as we went to the market, like it was like, this is a terrible analogy, but it was like ants attacking fruit at a picnic. I mean, everyone just came out to surround him.
Wow.
And luckily I don't have to. And I said to him, I said, "Is that hard for you to deal with?" He goes, "Well, only when I'm like having an argument with my wife and people come over to us."
Yeah.
So.
I know a listener to this show saw you once on the street and wrote in to say that they'd seen you in the markets and it made their market experience, but they were too nervous to say hello.
Oh, well, it's okay.
I saw, who I saw on the street today?
Who?
Paris in 4 months, Karen Olsen.
Okay.
I saw her in Coutume Cafe where I was filming with Tom Clark.
Okay.
I went up and talked to her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's nice to say hello to people. I think in France people tend to respect. If you see a famous actor on the street, you don't go up and talk to them so much. What do you think? Not like in...
Well, New York, you don't talk to if I saw RuPaul when I was there before.
Oh, yeah?
I was like... and, say that, you let them have their life.
Yeah. My little brother saw RuPaul the other day in LA.
Okay.
And said that he respected his privacy. And I said, my little brother wants to be on RuPaul's Drag Race. And I said, why don't you go and talk to him? But apparently in LA, everyone respects everyone's privacy.
Well, when I worked at Chez Panisse, we had a lot of celebrities come in. And sometimes they came in the kitchen just to talk to us, which was great. But the sort of the secret is you say hello, you say what you want to say, and you go thank you, for it was really nice to meet you. I love your film, Julia Roberts. Or the only time that this is like the worst day of my life was the day I came into Chez Panisse one morning, and everyone said, "Do you know who was in last night?" I was like, "Who?" They're like, "Barbara Streisand."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, everyone stop." I said, "Nobody thought to call me and tell me Barbara Streisand is in the restaurant." And they're like, "Well, we didn't think you cared." I'm like,
"Oh."
So for 2 weeks, I didn't talk to anybody. People were like walking by. "Hi, David." I'm like,
"Oh no. Oh
silence,
no,
yeah.
That's horrible." Well, Barbara, if you're listening, Barbara, give Dave a call. Can I call you Dave?
You sure?
I know that you said if you ever open a restaurant, you'd call it Chez Dave, but that you'd never do it. That's what you said last time you were on the show.
Okay. You have a good memory.
It just came back to my head then when we were talking. Because last time when you were on the episode, we did the A to Z of French food.
Okay.
I just put you on the spot all the way through. So if you guys want to go back and hear more of David, way back in the early episodes.
So you'll remember that when I said you hit 1,000 subscribers, you'll produce my show.
Is that what we said? I thought we said that I'd be on it. Am I producing it now? I'd happily produce your show if it means I get to meet the cool people that you mingle with.
Okay.
Do you mingle with cool people?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what makes a person cool?
I don't know. I've got no idea. You're asking the wrong guy here.
Okay.
But I want to know. I've got a personal question here. I'm terrible at cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got any tips for people who? I mean, I'm not terrible, but I'm never going to win any awards. Mm-hmm. Have you got any tips for people like me for how to, embrace being in the kitchen?
Well, one thing good about living in France is, first of all the ingredients are there. You just go to the market. You don't have to go far. You can even go to Monoprix, like supermarket, and you can get like duck fat. French cooking is not difficult. People say, "Oh, it's all sauces and so forth," but daily French cooking. I mean, the French don't do fancy food at home. They make like a quiche or a tart. So I always tell people who if you want to feel really accomplished in France, make a quiche or a tart, as they say. You can buy the pastry, at the supermarket, and then make the filling. It's basically, you whisk some eggs and cream or milk together and add vegetables or meat. And then you can work up to doing, making a tart dough yourself from scratch, which is fairly easy. Once again, it's like riding a bicycle. The first time you do, it's going to look like a mess. Yeah. And the second time, it's going to look better because you're going to learn from your mistakes.
So how many times would it take someone like me to get a good quiche going?
3.
Yeah. Okay, if you want to come around for dinner in 3 quiches.
Well, for you, maybe 4.
But one thing before we wind up, because we're running out of time, is... Yeah, I know it goes quick, right?
I know. Yeah.
It goes quick. And before I get onto those Patreon questions, we should do a video one day.
Okay.
And we should do a cooking video one day.
I actually am writing another book right now, and I have a whole story about the people who tell me I should do something.
But I said we should do something.
Okay. So now I have to go home and change it.
Do you get? Is that a lot? What happens when you're sort of a?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, "You need to come to Sicily. You need to come." I'm like,
wow.
I don't. Do I have to?
That sounds like someone using the future tense about Sicily there.
On doit, wait.
Yeah. Okay. Mysterious. No, but one day we should do some kind of, because I'm so bad at cooking. That like I've seen videos in America where they get Jamie Oliver and some hapless intern, and they stand back to back, and Jamie Oliver, whoever, or Gordon Ramsay, is going, "Dice the onions," and he does it in 1 second, and the intern's there is like getting started, and he goes, "Add them to the quiche," and then you see what you come up with at the end.
Yeah, but Jamie Oliver is probably cut up at 10,000 onions. Yeah. When I used to do yoga, I had this yoga teacher that was amazing. She was French, and this was in San Francisco, and she could do everything. She could do a bridge and walk around with her feet. Right. And she said to me, she goes, "I don't get anything out of yoga because I'm so flexible." She's like a circus performer kind of person. Sure. And that really stuck with me. It's not the person who can touch their toes who's getting a lot out of yoga. It's the person who can't, who's trying.
But she's teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't she get that joy of bringing?
Well, that's
yoga?
what. Yeah. We didn't get that far, but getting back to your situation, like you're learning. Yeah. Is Jamie Oliver enjoying cutting up the onion, or is the intern? Is it interesting to learn something new? you would probably get more thrill out of making a quiche and having it come out like your face is all like this big smile now.
Wait till you taste that fourth quiche, David. I don't think.
Okay.
Anyway, we got to wrap it up and answer those questions from the listeners. But thanks for coming in. The book is L'Appart. Even if you're not in the book club, go out and buy it and have a read. I have started reading it, I confess, even though I'm not meant to start until February. And you are going to enjoy it. If you guys like Paris, which I know you do, you're going to love the book. And we finish on what's coming up in the future for David Lebovitz.
Well, I'm working on another book. Mm-hmm. It's a subject that it's very different for me as well, but it's something that I love.
Can I guess? Is it yoga?
No, but they'll have to listen to Forrest's 52 Martinis podcast.
Great.
And I'll give some more clues there.
Friend of Forrest. Forrest has been on this show a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, she's great. I've known her for a long time. We've had a good couple good nights out at some bars in Paris.
Yeah.
Actually, we went to New York once, and we got treated like royalty.
Well, she's the queen of cocktails. I hope so.
Well, I knew all the bartenders.
Oh,
so
it was you.
I think it was because of me. Well, I'd like to say.
Okay, so tune in. Yeah, fair enough. Shout out to Forrest Collins' podcast, 52 Martinis, the queen of the cocktails in Paris, and buy L'Appart by David Lebovitz. And if you haven't joined the book club, get in there before February. And thanks for being on the Eiffel Tower again, David.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to answering the questions. And maybe next time you see me, I'll be the king of cocktails. Forrest will be the queen. I'll be the king.
And I'll be the jester following along behind, drinking lemonade. All right. Thanks, David. So there you have it. That was David Lebovitz, a great guy in the studio for the 100th episode. That was pretty fun. It's incredible to think that it was about 2 years that he came in for the first time. Amazing how far we've come. But what I figured I'd do, as I said, is talk a little bit now about the walks that I've been doing, the videos, the live videos, because this has been a lot of fun. What I've been doing, in case you're not on the internet, in case you're only listening to podcasts, I want to just walk you through this idea, the 20 days of Christmas that I've been doing every day for 13 days in a row now. I sit here on Monday, so it's the 13th arrondissement today. I've gone through, in order, from the first arrondissement to the 13th. I've gone through the districts of Paris and done a live video on Facebook. The way it works is I do the first 5 or 10 minutes for free, so if you're a Facebook follower, you'll have seen it. I get a guest who knows something specific about that first arrondissement, and we sort of introduce the guest, I introduce myself, we do it all live on Facebook, and then after 5 minutes we switch it to what I've been calling the Members Lounge, where we continue the walk, often for, the one we just did was about 45 minutes, the street art of Butokai. And the idea is if you sign up on Patreon, so that's patreon.com/the Earful Tower, you get access to these live walks. You get access to the sort of private Facebook group, which is really interactive. It's sort of you're meant to feel that you're on the walk with us. You ask questions, we answer them, and we walk around Paris showing it to you live. And the idea is you sign up for $10 every month, $10, and for that you get into the group. You get to watch the last, maybe there's 100 videos in there now. You can go and binge it, as I know a lot of people have, or you can just be there watching the live videos as they happen. And I think a lot of the people that we've had on have been tour guides, so it can give you, essentially you can consider it that you've been getting tours all over the city, which maybe will help you if you come to Paris in picking a tour that you want to do. But I want to just go through a few of the highlights of the last week. Today in the 13th arrondissement, Bénédicte and I from Explore Paris walked around and she was pointing out the street art in this little village of Butokai, which was really beautiful. She really knew her stuff, all kinds of murals up on the wall. Yesterday was the 12th, early morning sunrise walk with April Pett, the tour guide, and we walked in the Marché d'Aligre, a marketplace that was setting up. It was really exciting. Then we walked along the Coulée Verte, the elevated walkway that inspired the one in New York. But before that was with Guy Griffin from Café Mérico, who's been on the show a bunch of times as well. And we were just talking about neighborhoods in Paris, whether the 11th is trendy. We talked about coffee. We talked about the protests that have been going on in Paris. Also, you might have seen the 9th arrondissement, where I was with Rosie McCarthy from Not Even French, whose YouTube channel I was also on last week. That was a fun one as well. Down Rue des Martyrs and the most colorful basketball court in the entire world. And right before that, in the 8th, I was with Boris from Paris in person. This tour guide knew his stuff from the Parc Monceau. We walked all over it. He gave a really interesting insight into the history of the park. You know, the fun thing at the end of that video, he said, I think I only shared 5% of the stuff I know about that park. So there's something for all you guys. And then all the way from the 7th arrondissement back to the 1st. And that's what I'm going to continue. So there's never been a better time to support the Earful Tower. Get in there, see the last 13 episodes, and then catch up to watch live for the next 7. Is it worth it to sign up? Well, let me read you this comment from a regular listener and commenter, Brian Fitzgerald in Australia. A comment that he left right after I traced the Philippe Auguste wall for the 4th arrondissement. He said, fantastic walk show, Oliver and Lena. Yes, my wife was with me on that one. He says, I finally caught up and I'm getting my fix of Paris in a binge session. There's no other way I can get a fix of Paris other than being there, and it's all for just $10 a month. To put it into perspective, I bought an almond croissant to share with my wife yesterday, and it cost me $7.50. It was great. It brought back taste memories, but it was gone in 3 minutes. As a Patreon member, you can watch and watch and watch. No regurgitation necessary. That sounds a bit revolting if that's what you did with your almond croissant, Brian. He says, I look forward to watching again soon, from Brian. That's just a comment there on Facebook. That is very kind of you, Brian. Thanks for watching and for commenting. But there you go. There's an outsider's perspective on Patreon. I hope the rest of you join Brian and the other growing team of Earful Tower supporters. Anyway, back to David Lebovitz. If you're still listening after the Patreon plug there, David Lebovitz, his book, L'Appart, with a T on the end, it's going to be on the book club. So he's in February, we're all going to read it. There's a group on Facebook, sign up. We're going to read it together. And then at the end of the month, David will come on live for the Patreon subscribers and we'll talk through his book. So go and sign up, get into the book club. And David also hung around after this episode to talk about reader questions. So everyone on Patreon had a chance to ask a question. I think there were about 20. David answered every single one of them. It took about 25 minutes, half an hour. I'm going to add that as an extra episode on Patreon very soon. Everything was answered. So I think that's it. I think we can safely say we've covered the topic of David Lebovitz and Paris and Patreon and the Earful Tower. We're 100 episodes in. I'm looking forward to the next 100. And once again, thanks to everybody who's been part of making this a reality. And if you're in Paris tomorrow, that's Tuesday, send me a message. There's going to be a little event to celebrate the 100 episodes, and it's going to be a little bit exclusive. But if you're a friend of the show, you want to come along, send me an email, and I'll tell you where the location is. That's all from me. You've been listening to the Earful Tower. My name's Oliver G, and thank you for listening.